The jungle. He's a Brexiteer.
Get him in there!
Yeah. Well, from questions about whether Nigel Farage could be heading into the jungle, a now new poll from Conservative Home has revealed 7 in 10 Tory members say they want him in the party.
Oh, right. Some people might describe the party as a jungle. Today, we're asking, should Nigel Farage be admitted back into the Conservative Party? Earlier, we asked the Secretary of State for Justice, Alex Chalk. This is what he had to say.
This isn't a yes or no. I don't think there's any application, so I think it's an academic question, but fair question all the same.
Classic lawyer.
Well, let's now ask Albie Amankona about this, GB News contributor and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism. Albie, where do you stand on this?
No, I'll give a very clear answer. The answer is no. I've got a lot of time for Nigel. Of course, he's a much-loved colleague, and I would like him to go on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. But this is someone who has campaigned against the Conservative Party for the last 30 years. He's openly said that the Conservative Party should lose the next general election. And when I'm out on the doorstep with other activists campaigning for our brilliant candidates, I want to think that everyone that's in our party wants to campaign for our brilliant candidates. And Nigel Farage has made it clear that he does not want to do that.
And yet, I think back to the Conservative Party conference this year, and for me, the abiding images that I think of when I think of Tory conference was Priti Patel and Nigel Farage dancing on the dance floor at the GB News party. Everybody cozying up to him. First time he's been allowed back in, I think, to the conference. Certainly seems as though he's popular.
So he was allowed into the conference. I believe it was on a media pass. It would have been the pass that a lot of our other members of staff would have been on. So that's not something which is strange at all. He's always been a popular figure within the Conservative Party. It's, of course, why David Cameron called the Brexit referendum in 2016. That does not mean, however, that someone who has campaigned against the Conservative Party for the last 30 years and openly wants the Conservative Party to lose the next general election should be allowed into our party. And I think it's pretty weak that figures in our party can't just simply say what I have said. It's a perfectly logical argument. People that campaign against the Conservative Party should not be allowed in the Conservative Party. And I would love it if our ministers and Conservative leaders would have the balls to say that.
OK, well, here's what you've got in place of what you were pointing out there. Keir Starmer sums up the Conservatives like this. The choice facing the country is between a changed Labour Party, hungry to change the country through an exciting programme of long-term reform, and a Tory party with only gimmicks, division and more of the same. How far wrong is he?
I mean, he's completely wrong. I don't think the Prime Minister delaying our net zero commitments to help people through the cost of living crisis is a gimmick. I do not think the Prime Minister's 5 pledges or the Rwanda plan is a gimmick. We've just heard this morning that Italy has signed a deal with Albania, a similar Rwanda-style migrant deal with Albania to deal with their migrant problem. So Britain is leading the way on these issues. We've just got to get it past the courts and actually get the policy off the ground. These aren't gimmicks. Maybe if Keir Starmer spent more time actually voting with the government who's trying to solve the people's problems instead of hindering us at every opportunity, the Conservatives would actually be able to do what the people want to do. But it just seems that people like Keir Starmer want to stifle things.
Well, let's bring in David Mellor. He's former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, regular on the programme. And David, you would actually like to see Nigel Farage rejoining the Conservative Party. Tell us why. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, first thing is Nigel Farage is a major political figure. And if Nigel Farage is campaigning for the Conservatives, that would be much better than Nigel Farage campaigning against the Conservatives, because we know what he can do. And as someone once said in a different political crisis, it's better to have that blank inside the tent peeing out than outside the tent peeing in.
Crikey, what an analogy. Do you think it's possible, Albie, that, yes, he might have campaigned against the Tories for many decades now, but that the party's actually moved to the right as the left have moved to the centre, and that actually it's a different party that he used to campaign against?
No, I don't think that's true at all. Look, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to agree with David that Nigel Farage should be campaigning within the Conservative Party. As I mentioned before, I have a lot of time for Nigel, but we've got to remember that he was not chosen to lead the official Vote Leave campaign because he was seen to be too divisive. This is not just a person who is divisive with the general public, although he might be much loved by our viewers. He's actually also very divisive within the Conservative Party, and there may well be a lot of people on the other part of the Conservative Party to David, perhaps the One Nation wing of the party, which, let's remember, actually has the most MPs in the Conservative Party, who would be dead against Nigel rejoining the Conservative Party and having a leadership position. So we've also got to think about this on a matter of party unity. I do not necessarily think that Nigel is the uniting figure that many people, perhaps on the party's right, think that he is.
Final question, David. The jungle. Not asking if you're going into it, but what would Nigel Farage's chances, if he goes in, of winning, being king of the jungle?
The thing about Nigel Farage is he will add to the number of Conservative votes. The problem is with today's Conservative Party, there simply aren't enough people who can actually appeal to the mass of voters. You know, it's they just don't cut the mustard. And yeah, it's delightful to have the conversation we're having with our friend here. But how many votes is he going to add? Yeah, he isn't. And the answer is no one's heard of him.
Okay.
Not even a household name in his own front room. And I think what we have to be aware of is that Nigel Farage is a big person, and the Conservative Party needs something to rescue them. And at the moment, the Conservative Party look doomed.
What we don't need, David, is personal ad hominems. We had a big person leading the Conservative Party, Boris Johnson. That was a complete disaster. What we don't need is personal ad hominems. There are perfectly reasonable, talented people within the Conservative Party who can appeal. People like Kenny Badenoch, people like Penny
Gotta leave it there.
Thank
you both very much indeed, David Mellor and Albie Amankona. Thank you both very much indeed. Nigel Farage, should he be readmitted to the Conservative Party? Give us your view.
Do you know whose view I want to ask on all of this? Pat McFadden, actually. He is joining us. He's the Shadow Chancellor
in the jungle as
of the
well?
Duchy of Lancaster. No, he's very busy. He's a very busy man. Good morning to you, Mr. McFadden. I wonder, and please, I know it's hard for politicians, but I genuinely want a completely honest answer to this. Would the Conservative Party be more of an electoral threat to Labour with or without Nigel Farage?
The genuinely honest answer to that is that this debate that you're having there shows that the chaos is just going to continue. Whether it's around Nigel Farage or Suella Braverman or the Liz Truss supporters or the Boris Johnson supporters or somebody, they don't really believe in Rishi Sunak.
You're dodging the question.
He has the appearance of this sort of caretaker who's sitting on top of all this. So, to be honest, for me it's irrelevant who's involved in the chaos. What I'm more concerned with is stopping it.
Okay.
And the Tory party can't stop it by itself, as the debate you've just had shows.